Hello, Tom Homan and Fox News. There are people involved with other countries, involved with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, Korean theme, Saudi Arabia theme. Group at the same time, collusion slash S with news locations and interbranch forging and switching names. These are also, I noted, the recorded people that have been acting at all sides of acting with people fighting with each other that had been influenced to pretend they were fighting with each other to make fake ties and fake natures of ties to me, a fake exception of knowing me. I know, all I know is that there are people with the name Jamie Carone or James Carone, or what's his name? A Kevin Carone and a Mark Carone are involved with Justin Kulvinskas and Eric Jensen that have been planting evidences with a bunch of people from my area, involved with people from other countries, overt criminal enterprises and private ones. These are people that haven't been here for years and are people with the police forging and switching names. They attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and then as an adult. They attached me to fake conversations with the news, still rolls. As fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack that Connecticut's Channel 3 News pretended, as timed collusions with the sources of WTNH, and people evolved next to their location in a number of ways. In New Haven, who have also been at corners of streets along Route 175 and its conjunctions like Ridge Road. People have been planting fake and changed evidences with the people at the campuses putting faked and changed recorded reality and ties to people with a whole bunch of different countries. Heather Hansen recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are educators associated with people named Demoro, more than one people per person named Joe Demoro, and a John Demoro. And I'm involved with, and others associated with them, involved with their educators putting predicate action databases within as intelligence families, where and how they force the kids to use the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie, and to confess and demonstrate things right where they're pretending not to at the same time. Increasingly, there's a Mr. Neville who's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed all along Route 3 and its conjunctions, involved with a whole bunch of people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and teachers that have been painting fake ties and fake natures of ties between kids, and collusion slash S with the difference of that, as their collusion slash S with relative body dumping spots and names next to them. Untimely deaths years apart too, where there were U slash S of both of those things at the same time, including different murders and distinct murderers per themselves reported through the news that also attached me to fake conversations with and fake ties and fake natures of ties with these people to the people next to those locations. Justin Kulvinskas recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He influenced some girl from my grammar school who's associated with conversations with the O'Brien brothers, with various police departments, and one's named Cololo, involved putting fake, and many tied to them, putting fake police reports and fake ties to me since I was a kid in the Weathersfield Police Department database. They're just putting fake transcripts to pretend things that were recorded that never were. And these are increasingly people time collusion slash S with other natures of differences, and demonstrably where and how they've been through time. They have complete strangers and crime groups need to hide lie progressions because their whole industry is also reliant upon the difference of them criminally. That's why they have crimes separate with the breaching method, but all kinds roles with all kinds of crimes, including predicate acts with facts methods, roles, needs, and natures, and collusions as only counters to types of crimes. A whole bunch of people tied to one's named Leahy. I never had a conversation with. Have been pretending other through the mail too, with various courts as judges and family prosecutors and family members, and people tied to them, involved with wire crimes in the same house slash S, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to persuasion to collusion/S, and where and how sometimes their family does that, and the difference of that. Increasingly, Mike Roberts sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has roles with ones named Colo and Jensen, interstates, with state police families, and with some judges and prosecutors and people involved with DACA. Also with Brian Bonin, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Maria Fazzino and other neighbors of his, and roles with the intelligence families and people tied to them all along Two Rod Highway and its conjunctions like Hangdog Lane and the Brome Turnpike before the heart of Hartford, and conjunctions to that like Route 3. Apparently, he might have something to do with DACA. Brian Bonin. He has roles with wire crime action methods that courts and that agencies have roles with foreign countries at the same time. And there are people tied to it. Eric Mendez, that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed him involved with people with the Saudi attackers, also on off the state judicial branch offices in conjunctions to it in Wethersfield, Connecticut, that knew my Saudi friend before I knew her. And she would tell you that, but they change and fake what everyone says. And these are people at the World Trade Center, spots next to it, with a Scalora family that forced her to collusions with them, also as Wethersfield police did. Wethersfield police have a John DeMoro and have others. There's a woman named Ruth who is reportedly a wife of a deceased mayor, as one of the mayors and their family members, and natures of conjunctions to them, involved next to the state education department, also with names with the news, and with their sources interbranch that have been collusions with all natures of crime scenes, and a whole bunch of mixed natures of uses of campuses and religious spots. And two, we're going to have to address even the design of the mosque on Franklin Avenue, and how it is right on top of the road like that, and how it looks like a cheap, facade, and where and how the beginning of the Quran communicates other than is allowed to be communicated for it. And there are collusions with people pretending other, as these religious groups. I'm not going to call them extremism because the counters are collusions with them. Drafters of the Patriot Act that have recorded worse than criminal incompetence and self-valid roles with mass stacking of illusions in databases and fake motivations for it, and obligations to demonstrate that. In hyper-evidential itself, nature shows us not to leave out the difference between criminal insidiousness natures of peace and what we think is hyper-peace, so to speak, because nature shows us there are distinct natures of peace, and there are ways to use positives as negatives, and there are ways to discern it, because nature's identity uses lists distinctly from how we do, non-distinctly from how we do, but also distinctly from it. So if we do it in ways that are cause positive value nature progressions, acts of natures, including if it is criminal insidiousness natures of them, tactically imposed, roles with that, to keep the breaching method from being discerned, to keep syntactically valued apparent and more and more real motivations, also use even that fake, because of hyper additionally syntax, names, and styles differences, therefore names at A through Z. Our styles haven't been used. It can't defend the fact, human nature, quality, aspects of nature, the logic, and uses of it, and afford to have details addressed properly. Afford not to change and fake what people say if they use short words properly regarding the predicate acts with facts method, the crime methods. that they're only allowed to be manifest natures of the people, the sciences, therefore of the law. Speaking about crimes, while still collusions with predicate acts, with facts, and with difference. We have the same colorized, different colorized at the same time. So the El Salvadorian leader said an important thing. I don't know what they refer to their leader as, president, but they have rules. And so he's not allowed to just send someone back to America. For example, that's important. People aren't paying attention. How individual voices, even if they're a leader of people, they are forced to entertain locations, areas, and states, quality aspects of fact-sheeting nature that are criminally foreign influence slash hyper-criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions raw. And where and how distinct natures of countries had roles with slavery entrenched in America before America's founders were born, northern colonies and southern colonies, that wasn't just left out. That was replaced and right through our schools. And where and how the breaching method employed black and white differences to be other, and everyone to pretend other, or in other words, or address it, leaving out the breaching method, which was designed for that, to be a part of all natures of crime scenes, of terrorism scenes, like the World Trade Center attack. The drafters of the Patriot Act recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They're pretending other, but they know recorded. They have roles of all kinds of medicines, crimes, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, uses of database names, differences. Well, in other words, that's why they are switching names into branch. There are plenty of ways to pretend to believe they're saying legitimately that people have to sue for their rights. In other words, and while they're forging and switching names and refusing paper. See, order is the one identity of order is what they can't mimic. And they can't allow for it to be voiced the way it is actually manifest. We have black pupils, whites of eyes, that is inseparable from what slavery was about. Just like where and how and why it was entrenched, sickly, distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies, and through distinct identities, possession of those locations / hyper-possession, shown to us too, because there was also non-distinctly how distinct countries that were fighting with themselves too, and the companies of their own countries against themselves. It's not just competition. They can't afford to be, let alone to protract, short or it's proper. Already the breaching method showed them that there are means to discern how names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, their lawyers, the sources, and the court's names, and the police forms names, and their sources, and the names of family members of all natures of politicians, their name, and all natures of conjunctions to themselves, their campuses. They're self-valuing the same sequence shifts. And collusion /S with use /S of this recorded. Consciously putting people doing the opposite with things too at the same time. So where and how they play stupid and got away with it so long. Changing and faking what others say regarding predicate acts with facts. Not even a lawyer. Not a police form. Even if they never heard it taught this way. In other words, the organized crimes with facts, where we have black pupils, whites of eyes, a breaching method reassigned communications with that and roles with it, blaming other things, others themselves for what that caused too as roles. Otherwise, that body is sensed. And through our own A through Z. Here, Anthony, vaccines, this is inseparable from the subject. How we have black pupils and whites of eyes. How the breaching method reassigned that, and how nature itself, its communications of that is replaced. They are replaced. And James Madison's communications regarding it. And the founders behind him. and he was a founder before he was a president. And our founders are distinct from our presidents because they directed us to understand that. They directed us to refer to them plural as James Madison singular, and to understand that and how then they went and got George Washington to use his plan to counter-extort and forced to have no other means to survive. People at key locations between states, between colonies that themselves of different countries, not just England they faced, not just the internationally monitored conversations. And Roosevelt with that singular breaching method that was using how it was also a whole bunch of extensive things to keep that singular breaching method from its simple roles with all that, to pretend it complicated. It is at countries A through Z, at locations A through Z, a distinct identity of hyper criminal foreign influences that everyone wants to counter. But everyone was forged, needs, natures, and styles, only capable of blaming other things, others, or selves, like things like criminal and things like criminal foreign influences, leaving out how that's only manifest. Because the breaching method made that true. And it made roles pretending other for itself. And it made those truths used by the people that are victims of it too, to blame other things, others, and everyone's leaving it out. Now there are styles of non-integrity needing to pretend that they could speak for integrity. There are the proverbial, in other words, we are in a semi-ancient trap. Forgiveness is also because it is recorded people are forcing, tricking, hurting, and persuading people to blame other things, others, or selves. And this is recorded right where we have short words that we could say. It's having black pupils, whites of eyes is inseparable from the subject of slavery. Just as is the breaching methods roles with that as a method /s. In the roles plural, the /s parts were and are effectively to keep other things, others, or selves blamed past, active, and to come, and to have means to maintain that, capable of being. There are people with the name Perone and Kerr who are involved with Fox, with intelligence families next to Fox Connecticut News. And I don't know all their names. They're neighbors of O'Brien Bowman. These are people in interstates with intelligence community and foreign countries involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders on a mass scale, where they're building upon predicate acts with facts at each campus and off them. And through time, like if they put people and lie about why and how kids meet other kids, and they're simultaneously faking that, our intelligence community in other countries, and rolls with the guilt. There's not one identity of location, not collusion /s with it already being and haven't been self-valued. Where and how you guys did your jobs as told, which is there's incapable of doing that as told, and of affording to be defended syntactically properly. The value of the Constitution unabridged, and how hyper simultaneously us needing to appreciate why and how we have rights are too numerous to have to list them. And we have impositions where all criminal foreign influences were propagated to design to have things like criminal foreign influences blamed, leaving out the hyper criminal foreign influences. which had those distinct countries rolls with those crazy things entrenched and rolls with it sensed self-value, pretending otherwise that body is sensed. This is why and how they still have music playing in the background and experts getting away with pretending they don't realize that our founders did not have free speech. Even once James Madison was a president, he still didn't have free speech because there was a breaching method entrenched. We have that breaching method replaced right from the founders of right from James Madison's communication. We have self-value roles, needs, natures, and styles pretending other, using his words or the fact that some expert wrote about him and quoted some proofs, leaving out what they communicated. Communications is simultaneously greater than and more finite than, and with active relativity to what is said. Just like the identity of the sciences, even the identity of English alone is simultaneously greater than and more finite than the value of math, while has its value too. This is important because you are at A through Z, the locations, areas, and states are forcing the leaders to entertain their narratives and natures by economies as value nature systems tactical ulterior from how nature communicates for us to also understand how and why we are a value/value progression as that which can't be made up, but as that which has made up things in place of what is true always. Forced. There are no justifications legitimate for why and how the black pupils, whites of eyes are left out, let alone that simultaneously and with our founders communicated about it and nature itself. Forced placed in roles pretending other. That is motivated by roles with other natures and methods of predicate acts with facts and or self-value /S of it role /S. A whole bunch of knaves where we are only allowed to be heard at formal or informal. We counter this now with digital, but the agencies and the courts have been changing and faking digital evidences and using the natures of employment, like with online policing, as natures of collusion /S with all natures of crime scenes. And at or next to the news locations and the differences of guilt there, that is used remotely too. With the breaching method showed that people that they went back and forth with questions and cases and behind the scenes with courts and police forms, including increasingly just faking that completely into databases. No one goes back and checks. This invest the whole worth of whole careers of interbranch names individually grouped and together. Criminally foreign influence, tactically illusions raw. A certain type of victim /hyper victim that wants to pretend that's debatable too. And that's right where and how they're evil. So they are preventing us from addressing how they're hyper victim, because of the proofs. They have already recorded themselves, and it's been shown they need to hide that, or they recorded themselves. Predicate acts with facts, methods, collusions, whole method /S collusion /S. Because then too, with the demonstrations of it, and nature knew that the breaching method knew that this would be this way. This breaching method has use /S of quality aspects and nature of ground location /S differences to where and how we are. Hyper additionally, the difference has the voicings for it and as the ground as a special difference. Well, not the ground, but anyway. As the system abridged, though, prevented a special difference, its voice, its directive. its means to guide us. Its relativity to that hyper invisible but still discernible, as it is hyper conjunction to all parts of speech, not just of English grammar. See the nature of debate. Who knows what thing? These are things. Well, this is how we. Let's figure out which way we can measure. The problems. You guys leaving out the roles with the organized crime. Excuse me, acts and methods, and with differences, racketeering worse than war crimes, and the differences of guilt also used remotely, as their styles of logic, natures of logic. You guys have recorded having been attaching meat to fake conversations, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people, playing games with the black-white families on off the state judicial branch offices, corrections offices, increasingly with people with a Victorian home. I don't even know their names on Two Route Highway. I don't even know if they still live there. But the intelligence community increasingly has strangers affected to record, express, demonstrate, confirm they have multiple child offenders of kids, sexual and medical, and forensics names involved with this house. I don't know what their names are. And there's a Phil Cololo, PHILCOLELLO, who's one of the people recorded, expressed, demonstrated, confirmed, also with a Bob Chase, with a Whiting forensics, with a whole bunch of people with digital crimes, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, also with Joshua Julian, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, with people in my area, by other people tied to him. He recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that he collusions with that and other natures of organized crimes. And people involved with relative home break-ins through the years, who also have roles with state police forms and other police forms, how juxtaposed with Wethersfield Police and foreign and domestic military. The Kulvinskas family will confess things to you. President or President Obama and Biden, etc. There's also an officer who they said was named Hunter, who's one of the ones at Central Connecticut State University involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Harper Courts, that have been planting evidences with their families and intimate ties in foreign and domestic military or have worked criminal enterprises and private ones at West Hartford and New Britain locations, with families involved with Wethersfield, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and such, with names at and next to corrections and judicial branch offices through time. Also, who coordinated collusion/S roles with the World Trade Center attack in Washington, D.C., with names there and through time, and with the World Trade Center and the court next to it, bonded by distinctly, but non-distinctly too, as databases, predicate acts with facts roles, and self-value use/estimate, and the difference of it there or other places, and where people are estimating, asking questions, and speaking and having spoken for words like power or control. They need to hide that. In other words, these are also people at and next to the state capitol, with a Mark Violet and Mike Violet. Also with the names of locations and businesses next to Harvard Hospital, with foreign and domestic intelligence and overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And their uses as a motive, a fake motive, their right to lie and directions to lie. In other words, but that was an outcome that is maintained by the breaching of it keeps hyper victims / predators, and to keep the styles, needs, natures, pretending other, so self-valuing, and to get away with it, needing to self-value. Really, why and how? The sciences have stayed so criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, with depreciation of principles, and with quality aspects, nature of debate itself as criminal insidious nature. I'm not a lawyer, but nature itself shows us too, / hyper-criminal insidious nature. There were criminal foreign influences involved with those names of countries and companies Overt criminal enterprises and terrorists at the same time, no only capable of being and having been used remotely by that which had also distinct countries involved with the slavery, but also non-distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies. Right through the Civil War, too, they still had roles with slavery. They still have roles with black voices, white voices using their difference as collusions against any voice who tries to use what is true always. You guys are forcing groupthink. In other words, you guys are collusion slash S that way too, timed. I don't even know all their names. I don't know any of their names, the black families involved with that Victorian house on Two-Route Highway is increasingly involved with interbranch family members forging and switching names and private tied to them. And people tied to it as a Phil Collo increasingly involved with predicate acts on my street. And we're going to have to get them on paper because they were with police forms in foreign countries, overt criminal enterprise, private ones that confessed through communications, demonstrations of timed identity theft, fraud, slanders, collusions, federal evidences, crimes. And these are increasingly people with whiting forensics also rolls with these names and their neighbors. Increasingly, there is a Kevin Dillon also involved with them, and a bunch of people at Hartford Hospital involved with sexual and medical crimes, and roles with all natures of crime scenes that judges and prosecutors and foreign and domestic doctors have, also putting faked and changed transcripts, faked and changed recorded reality, putting fake, doing that, forging names of other doctors to do it. These are people that are also collusions and cover-ups of that, having done such at campuses filmed 24/7. They're pretending fake things were filmed there by filming fake, and these are uses. These are use/uses of all natures of investigations, investigators, and of cases, criminal and civil, used remotely, criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence. And the difference of that, getting over on that identity of hyper-difference that shows us we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time with exceptions for how we are capable of discerning. It's hyper-difference as what is generating and has generated. How other species' bodies have two eyes, ones even that are no longer here. Some ways, because humanity's criminal foreign influences, while pretending other, is forcing nature's communications from here. It is forcing the value of that from here. It is as the special difference is forced from here, where we could be systems tactical ulterior from its own. Even the difference with male and female, no one allows free speech about it. They change and fake what we say regarding predicate acts regarding that too. We are being shown that hyper difference, which is showing us its body to an extent, which comes with its complete identity relationship to itself with only increasing value of that, equally increasing its value, even once gone, to an extent that is discernible. Also, for how denials of it come with demonstration / S of the same thing. The breaching that the knew that would be demonstrated to ourselves. So it showed the identities assigned to the individually grouped in together and other natures of identities of criminal and citizens nature, not just criminal and enterprises, private ones, and terrorists, and or not just the ways. We know that they have been grouped and influenced to be and to be stayed. The worst way is per the way that designed the suburbs before America's founders were born, designed them for a three ways manifest: torture, extortion, and fact-cheaping nature slavery method. It designed them to hide behind how sickly, distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies, More than 13, though. It was entrenched, but all sickly, non-distinctly, too. It measured and maintained and sensed by roles, needs, natures, styles, pretending not to discern how the value and the importance of appreciating how non-distinctly A through Z were victims of the same thing. And increasing that is these are logic, needs, and nature styles only capable of blaming things like criminal foreign influences for things that nature itself shows us. In other words, that's what we were showing. In other words, that's the point of discerning how there were distinct nations and countries and roles hyper-additionally with what no one wanted roles with. And with that, which wanted roles with it. In other words, there were criminal foreign influences involved there, but there was also a hyper criminal foreign influence that had northern colonies and southern colonies, and has that the states still, locations, areas, and states, styles, needs, natures, blaming other things, others, ourselves, for things that nature itself and that our founders communicated for us. To blame on the breaching method that was sickly, non-distinctly entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. You guys will still not allow the hyper-evidential use legitimately because the people have been speaking for the sciences. They have been stayed, certain type of victim / hyper victim, tactically pseudo-educated. All exceptions in exception nature. Tactically collusion /S with use /S of exception nature as appreciated syntactically, tactically ulterior from nature, how nature communicates for us to appreciate exceptions, exception nature. They're just faking it, faking their motivations for it. Breaching method increasingly needs other things, others, ourselves, blamed for its roles with people's motivations. It knew nature would demonstrate that. So it designed a whole bunch of needs, natures, and styles that it could show. They need to hide nature's demonstrations of that, or how they could become manifest. And it shows them a means /S to do such. Increasingly, people next to the news locations are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with databases at each age and nature of campus, and as collusions with the difference of guilt there, or the names of the people next to the campuses, or tied to a temporary. Same ones with the news, planting evidences there. So these are different differences. There are people with the mental health and the triages in California who have collusions with Hartford Hospital and with a bunch of people with the houses, with the intelligence families next to them, like Mayano, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with medical offenders of kids, with prosecutors and judges, planting evidences, has something to do with their roles of corners of streets and like on Highcrest and Fox Hill, and Highcrest and Hangdog Lane, and the other corners of that street have increasingly roles of people planting evidences, fake ties, and fake natures of ties to me, and lying about what they think when I use their names. These are the ones with the interbranch that are refusing to identify themselves. A bunch of people tied to a John Mayano, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a whole bunch of people at the Britain Superior Court, planting evidences with people at that corner, like a Jennifer Kennepicky and her mother, as good people that they're using for evil. Their roles also with a Mike Roberts, and the intelligence with the triage in California, and the ones in Connecticut, who also with my neighbors, and a whole bunch of people tied to them, like a Robert Rodriguez, and like their cousin, Phil Cololo, have roles with more people, child abusers. These are the kids they forced roles with. They forced the principal upskirt nature roles with them, with various natures of organized crimes, with shopping centers, I just learned that at a Stop and Shop off of Kitts Lane in Newington. They have like there's no shopping carts, but like where's the shopping carts? People have been stealing the shopping carts. People involved with Kitts Lane and in conjunctions to it, a Dr. Shub recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with all the countries, like in the subjects of and the questions that Judge Napolitano with Judging Freedom YouTube channel has, and with all kinds of psychiatry. These are a Dr. Shub with modern languages has roles with his family that works with probate courts, and they have probate court judges and prosecutors and conjunctions to the state judicial branch offices, like Route 3, and conjunctions to that, like Hangdog Lane, and its conjunctions like Two Route Highway, which is conjunctive to Kitts Lane with the Newington Stop and Shop. And so the Dr. Shub has roles with people involved with Saudi attackers from Wethersfield, with people from Newington police departments, retired Wethersfield police chiefs, involved a whole bunch of people directly and indirectly involved with the name Ray Colo and Joshua Julian, and a bunch of people tied to them with sequence shifts and created fake exceptions of knowing me, and including completely made up, like the Joshua Julian, completely made up fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Mark Violet, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with others, names all along Ridge Road, were lied to about me. All kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders involved with retired police chiefs and their families and intimate ties, like a modern like a Mazzucato family along Ridge Road. These are also, per them, the police forging and switching names and refusing to identify themselves legitimately, refusing to get on paper since I was a kid. These are Wethersfield police that attached me to, involved with them, that attached me to fake conversations with the police at the police station when I was a kid and then as an adult. These are people with all kinds of federal crimes, including with guns, with kids, and with gun ranges, and the difference of the guilt with they have roles pretending to be against that with passions and emotions on Facebook with a Joe Aiello. I never saw him on a Wethersfield campus in my life. They made one exception after he graduated to make a fake exception, which is also one of the things I noted about people involved with the police that recorded involved with forcing the principal child abusers. So Joe Aiello also has something with others tied to a Chet Casper and a Mike Daly, and their roles with intelligence families at Old Saybrook, Connecticut. Also with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And then, these are roles with uses of all natures of investigations, investigators, used remotely, criminally, for influence, tactically, delusions, raw. And their collusion/S recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with intelligence families that grew up near me, that have roles with them with spots at and next to the state capitol in Hartford, Connecticut. These are also ones that had time collusions with Saudi attackers recorded. They're pretending others recorded with Whiting Forensics, also involved with people with the name O'Neill. And these are people that were collusions years before the Afghan fiascos and things in the news that were also collusion/S with where and how the agencies have been collusions at campuses, including medical campuses like Hartford Hospital, putting fake transcripts in databases, fake conversations, fake evidences, means to cover up where and how they already used all natures of investigations, investigators, and roles with cases and news relative already used as collusion/S and pretending other as roles with predicate acts with facts by using words like crimes anyway. This certain type of victim/hyper victim the breaching method only allows to be capable of being. and or only allows, and or that body was his sense, including if it was a majority of people speaking for all properly, scientists properly, including if it is everyone, and that is adapted to. Any grouping of countries trying to counter this, the UN has roles, also with the Bob Chase a number of ways, with digital crimes and forensics crimes with the whiting forensics. Also increasingly collusion/S since I was a kid, people involved with whiting forensics, involved with various natures of organized crimes on my street, and the names involved with the retired police chiefs, and refusing to get on paper, forging names, switching names, with the ones named Colo, further involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, including with judges speaking fake things, forcing that on little kids, as women judges' roles too. Time collusions with the black KKK, Latino, etc. Differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes. Know how nature shows us its body, showing us that we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time for how we are its body, its system, now abridged since semi-ancient times. Nature itself shows us that we can't afford to have our founders free speech. Therefore, nature shows us hyper-additionally we can't afford to have the free speech of Native Americans appreciated. And the cause of it, we need to keep it blamed on other things, others ourselves. Otherwise, we are sensed trying to speak properly about that. Nature itself is showing us that Native American, there are three natures of Native American founders that come with James Madison's plan, where he had to force the rest of the Native Americans and the states and the presidents to use his plan or to stay. Systems tactically ulterior used remotely, criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence, and or through all attempts to counter all that is and creates, also as collusion/as keeping other things others themselves, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, to be blamed too, in syntactical defenses of that. Many ways it is more probable, not just more practical, to theorize, let alone to convict. It is more scientific that to theorize, let alone to convict. That modern religions, plural, they are greatly involved with cipher to be deciphered, because already the names of the people of the sciences from off their locations had no choice but to collude and or to be sensed. And per a method that no one even fathomed, because it organized roles of negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures, and criminal and ceaseless natures of positive at all locations /s that no one wanted. Right where and how the roles for us, that's the job though. That's the, that's what you have to say syntactically or say nothing. No, for legitimate reason. But that is to you keep its roles with that left out, which changes the relativity of everything. Okay, so Tom Homan, Mark Violet, and others tied to him have roles with the bordering countries like Mexico and Canada. And these are roles with people with UConn, with psychiatry, who have roles with overt criminal enterprises, plural, and private ones, including with digital crimes, with UConn, with judges and prosecutors and medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic, with Los Solitos and other themed criminal enterprises, involved also with the John DeMauro and others, with the FBI Director Robert Lusk and his co-defendants next to the Wethersfield Board of Education for the state corrections offices, and the state judicial branch offices. They have been stacking predicate acts with facts and influencing people to act, for other people to do that too, because the difference is also used remotely. In other words, thank God nature will show us how to respond to everything. First of all, it's a hyper crime scene. It's worse than war crimes, where how we have revolutions course, defeated and replaced. Not one has traced, because they have stayed our books as tools to keep sense and sensibility, sensing for the breaching method, self-value roles, replacing what nature itself and what our founders communicated to us, using all the truths, all natures of truth for lies to pretend other, as the breaching method knew that only capable of being victims / hyper victims would only be capable of doing. Nature shows us the difference between criminal and insidious natures of positives, and positives that are also hyper positive. For example, not criminal insidious nature. But nature appreciates lists in ways we have been forbid means to appreciate, and needs to appreciate them. Have stayed forsaken, like our right to have free speech. We also forbid offensively the right to have nature debate regarding where and how we have free speech or not, regarding use of exceptions and exception nature too, and the differences of guilt. Because the breaching method needed that to hide behind too. And it increasingly does, because the breaching method knew that nature would increasingly demonstrate to humanity, not with words, but then nature demonstrates a human factual nature breaching method is one of the multiple things that those laws were value as, and our value as, relative to itself, its identity relation to itself, and the value of that, which generates all things. Which has all exception nature and demonstration / S of the same thing. And who denies this has demonstrations of the same thing / S inherent to, active to, and progressive to their identities of logic and their natures of logic. And this would have been discerned. But for the relativity of the offensive, of the roles, all kinds of natures of organized crime methods, predicate acts with facts, with reactions to names and sequences and instances. In other words, increasingly leaving out and only capable of simultaneously self-valuing, having been left out, other names and the name of the scientific value of the human fact, human nature breach method, left out and replaced from. And while any subject, when did any identity of expert speak proper for the law or for the sciences? Not honest science spoke for the suburbs, let alone for New York City. And if anyone tries to speak other, they don't understand where and how and why. How anyone could be motivated too. No one understands how anyone could be motivated to change their faith, what others say, and prevent to be used the hyper-evidential, having black people's whites of eyes. Having had that means clearer than day to discern all the formal evidences, treatments, so many ways, having been used as a collusion / as hyper-additionally, but also as collusions with that breaching method itself, which employs and use that. Also as hyper-additional collusion / S, with ones at all locations / S that no one wanted collusions with, but they had no choice. So responses to that could be used to propagate self-value, self-cultivated descriptions of the past, of names of differences, in a way that would be / S, as needs, natures, and styles they have to blame other things other than themselves in defense of the description rather than the breaching method. That quality of fact human nature that we need to be free and to defend the Constitution unabridged has offensively been forbidden since some ancient times, has been prohibited. Free speech. It has been roles screening the breaching method, so needing to pretend other simultaneously and needing to pretend other for fake motivation simultaneously with means provided for that. So increasingly, people at Harvard Hospital have a Kulvinskas family and other intelligence families, foreign and domestic, intermilitary, involved with foreign and domestic military, and courts family members, and police forms family members that have been, along Route 175, from Wethersfield founding locations to Central Connecticut State University into Britain, hiding things from their superiors. And sometimes, in some ways, their superiors have been hiding things from them and having them do things. But that's why they're leaving out what they confessed and demonstrated through communications. As complete strangers that sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. Things that in the O'Brien family, for example, confess, demonstrate, record, confirm, associated with their rules all along Route 175 and Route 3 with the Justin Kulvinskas and with the Mark Violet, that he didn't use their names. And also ones with the name Ray Colola with wire crimes in the forms of where they fake the police conversations as phone conversations, as wire crime action methods. And they do fake police reports, conversations and ties to kids at police report departments roles. And that was this time collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, actually, not legitimately unmarked police forms and stuff like, and terrorists. Increasingly, people with the name Scalora are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people named DeMauro and Central Connecticut State University, involved with a whole bunch of people tied to it as a detective, Samuda. I never had a word of conversation with him. Involved also with a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. And there are students that the Robert Luskin and Detective Samuda had sexual and medical abuses of them, including use of that with people tied to a Heather Hansen, a John DeMauro, and a Joe DeMauro have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed confessions regarding sexual abuses. And like John DeMauro said he raped my sister. I thought he was lying because it was right after a Mr. Abruzzi. It was after a Mr. Abruzzi told me who that Joe DeMauro was, but not telling me. He just told me to do a maze that the kid had. And I thought he was making it up. And I don't know if he's making it up or not. But increasingly, there's a Dawn LaConch too. She pretended she had her picture taken near me. I never had a word of conversation with Dawn LaConch. She's increasingly involved with people. I don't know where she lives. Her father, John LaConch, is involved also with Thaddeus Grabowski and with the Dominic Laparada, who have been planting evidences with a whole bunch of people at my campuses who also planted evidences on my street. So if it's brought up in the future, it makes it look like we knew them. Or some of them, there was exceptions that were in demonstrations, the same thing. They were recorded trying to use that too, critically pointable tactical illusions on a mass scale. They're faking and changing what they think about what people say and said honestly. In other words. And then they try to search for ways to get caught and blame other things. They're hiding what comes first. And then so they're increasingly forcing me to draw a map from Wethersfield, Connecticut to Harvard Hospital in Hartford and to New Britain, Connecticut, Central Connecticut State University. Mark Violet and Kevin and Justin Kulvinskas sought me out as strangers to make confessions, fake demonstrations. They have roles with the people at Harvard Hospital. And next to it, also with the girl reportedly dragged to her death. I don't know her name. Alea Aldrich or something like that. I saw her outside that hospital with them before that would happen. That's also ones with the name DeMauro, involved with the Heather Hansen, who also recorded confessed to. She reportedly told my father that DeMauro raped her too. Heather Hansen. I never had a class with her. They checked. I had her in a middle school class, summer school class. I never saw her on a middle school campus in my life. I never saw her on a grammar school campus in my life. Increasingly, people from my grammar school and my middle school attached me to fake ties and fake natures of ties to other people. And so they made fake exceptions of me being around people real quick. Like a fake, I never saw her inside of middle school or high school. And I only saw a real quick couple of exceptions at high school, Heather Hansen. In other words, and there are people with the name Kerr. There's an officer, Jerry Miller, confessed the name Jerry Kerr. There's more than one Jerry Kerr, and a Mike Kerr, and a Joe DeMar recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed they have their educators involved with them, with planting evidences and databases, and then acting too on the sides of the parks. They've been planting evidences with people involved with mayors and their family members and their neighbors, planting identity theft, fraud, slanders, and then cover-ups of that years later too. In other words, increasingly people tied to former Mayor Gold have roles all along Hangdog Lane and 2 Route Highway. Increasingly with some black-white KKK theme, Confederate flag theme, and foreign and domestic medical families involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, people with whiting forensics involved with this bill below. Has something to do with conjunctions too. 2 Route Highway, which is also Kitts Lane, and their roles with years ago, stealing shopping carts as their idea, as ones with the Kitts Lane and how they have the shopping carts missing at that Stop and Shop. These are also security with the different shopping centers. These are people involved with Big Y. You know, I love the places and all the things. I try to mind my own business. These are people involved increasingly with one's name Mark Violet. And I don't know all their names, but it has something to do with their roles next to the state capitol. And people on Elm Streets and Weathersfield and Rocky Hill that are conjunctive to the Route 3, involved from other areas that have been planting predicate acts on my street and sequence shifts with the ones with the Weathersfield police who asked me to fake conversations with them as a kid, now as an adult. Has something to do, in other words. So they're hiding things from presidents too. There are proofs. Please get them on paper, one name and sequence too. What are they doing? Also, they said that they have a Joshua Stryker with them. I never had a conversation with Joshua Stryker. He's pretending fake things in databases with a whole bunch of people involved with predicate acts on my street in Weathersfield who have been planting evidences at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, at Trinity College of Hartford, Connecticut, and other campuses like UConn and Quinnipiac. I didn't even go to those campuses. Middlesex Community College, before I was even there, they're putting sequence shifts also preemptively. Eric Jensen will record, confess, demonstrate, confirm this with the Mike Roberts and people with the state police interstates and along Route 3. And it's conjunctions, along the Burlington Turnpike, it's conjunctions with state police and the courts families on 2 Route Highway. And it's conjunctions like Hangdog Lane. Increasingly recorded involved with people that offensively pretended fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and fake motivations that were time collusions with other people, and as the people that are connected who had time collusions inter-cities, intra-cities, inter-campuses, intra-campuses, and interstates, and internationally. In Connecticut's Central Connecticut State University has people involved with the business department, the community, the computers department, sociology, psychiatry. There's a Jamie Carone with sociology. recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people that live near me, with various natures of federal crimes, with their educators, involved with abuses of children, including sexual and medical. And they lied about me to a Italian class teacher. That's why I got out of the class in one day. It was only me and two other kids. In other words, and three other kids. One of them, my neighbor, who was already recorded involved with predicate acts with the school. I didn't know how to refer to it as that, but I recorded that various ways and sequence shifts. They're increasingly recording, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the spots around the Wethersfield/Hartford corrections offices. Increasingly reports on rules with shootings and on people getting hit by cars and stuff on Wethersfield Avenue. Real or made up. They're involved with people that have been actual federal crimes and natures of crimes even worse than that. They have roles with that location and area, also with, as a town line, and as where and how. Wethersfield police are there now, and they're building where it used to be. There's I believe it's Rockland Street. There's ones with the name Joshua Julian. There's a Joshua Julian and his mother are involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids per people tied to them, and with the principal child defender, and people with religious spots involved with sequence shifts, taking pictures, trying to use truth for lies. They have roles with all kinds of natures of investigations. Investigators already used criminally foreign impulse, tactically delusions raw. Mark Violet, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Them roles with a whole bunch of names at Trinity College and next to it, with some black KKK Confederate flag themed intelligence, as the ones with the Wethersfield police forging and switching names and planting fake ties and fake natures of ties to me, with people from my area, from other areas that also did it along Route 3 and Route 175, and also connected by their confessions and syntax regarding their spots next to the state capitol, and with the interbranch forging and switching names. These are the same ones involved with different countries, overt criminal enterprise, private ones, and time collusion/S. We use /S of that because their roles with differences, racketeering worse than war crimes. Where and how we're placed is what nature and is what our founders communicated to us. So please follow mandated law for Wethersfield Police and for New Britain Superior Court and for Hartford Courts and the Connecticut District Court and the rest of the names that next to the state corrections offices and the state judicial branch offices that have been planting wire crime acts and methods, faked audio and video transcripts, faked phone transcripts, fake ties to kids at the police station when they're kids and then as an adults, distinctly but sickly non-distinctly too. Never had a word of conversation with older Mendez brother. Further involved with multiple police to put multiple falsified police reports roles that are distinct for the same arrest, where they're faking it on each one of those. Increasingly, a Bob Chase, a Phil Kalal are increasingly recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with state police, with Wethersfield police, and with the same house/S, like a Kalal house and a Smith house, involved with the people from Afghanistan too. These are not legitimate roles with Afghan military, with people's names, and with Facebook. Facebook increasingly has collusions with Wethersfield Police Department and the Britain Superior Court and Hartford Courts with child sex offenders, including with campuses. A principal upskirt nature has roles with Hartford Hospital, increasingly too with UConn people, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. See their narratives about their roles with Los Solitos, and these are not legitimate roles of military if they're pretending to be Los Solitos for that roles with that, and with differences. We're going to examine how we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. You're going to get me out for fake conversations with this Leahy family and the change conversations with this Violet family and the Kulvinskas family with the intelligence families at Hartford Hospital, increasingly collusions with the World Trade Center attack and with names involved with the Saudis that I know too before I knew them, who had roles with this Mr. Abruzzi and people before I was and after. You guys have a name mentioned, Morin. There's a Julie Morin, who were classmates of her, like increasingly a Sal Sevilla, has people tied to him involved with planting all predicate acts with facts, fake ties and fake natures of ties to me. I never had a conversation with him. He tried to make it look like other with Eric Jensen one time. And, it was demonstration of the same thing. I didn't respond. In other words, it was real quick exception. And that was after we graduated. And the same time with a one Cub Scout meeting I went to, in other words, they increasingly there are ties between people who make fake exceptions with the interbranch intelligence tied to them in a whole bunch of different countries and overt criminal enterprises at and next to campuses pretending passions and emotions too. Mass behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. The breaching method shows them, the people who pretend they could speak for the identities, for the sciences, how they are criminal insidious natures of and psychopath natures of calmness and or of aggression. Please fix the fake conversations with me that WFSB had and has. That's also them recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. Intercities, they have collusions with these people like Mark Violet and his roles with foreign and domestic military and names next to the state capitol through time. Involved at UConn and Central Connecticut State University. Involved at and next to Harvard Hospital with the houses and businesses there, overt criminal enterprises and private ones. It's just concentrated there, covering up life progressions. Increasingly with people that live near me, involved with the ones from other areas, planting evidence on all sides of my house, and interbranch forging and switching names. I don't care. They have a bunch of police departments already caught with them now. So get them on paper, one name in sequence, because there are other people involved worse. And I want a response to the principal's confirmations to me and what actually was recorded. They're forcing such and pretending it's not letting it told, and they're lying about their motivations. Hear them with the fake sides, with those subject treatments, with the sexual rights, and they're measuring and maintaining. They leave out what's actually recorded there. They're changing and faking what's digitally recorded and what's audio and video recorded at campuses. They're changing and faking it. Fear God, because you/us for that were also recorded, and you guys are incapable of not changing and faking what people say. You guys are offensively forbidding us short words, unabridged, and offensively stealing our identities and allowing us to use short words about it. Get me off the fake conversations with Channel 3 News, who had collusions with the sources of WTNH. At the same time, their roles with the intelligence next to their buildings and Fox Connecticut News and names next to their buildings are increasingly collusion/S within as the same ones. White eyes leaking too through silence, through disbelief.